that are not good for them. And so sometimes these things aren't made available or made for mass consumption because of that very thing. When you manipulate energy, even in a positive way, you're as an individual, you're tapping into, you have to have the capacity to hold that frequency in the first place to even be able to tap in to that energy, to manipulate it in that manner. So we really need to, and we're something else, accountability in adulting is really lacking, I think, as well. There is none. And so you really have to have a solid station of self to tune into, to be able to have accountability and really hold that space to manipulate those energies and not get the it's like if you're holding onto a rope and you're vibrating that rope up and down, eventually that rope is going to snap back, or and or a rubber band, in the same manner, and that's just the laws of the universe and reality that we, and those things cannot be manipulated in this 3D realm. So I think we have had I think we're when we think about online and some of these spiritualists that are really tapping in and playing with some of this stuff, and occultists, and multiply that with the behavioral modification as well as the bullying and online and targeting and so forth, there is a snapback that is going to occur. And as a result, there something the mental health community doesn't incorporate is the spiritual body, the emotional body, and a lot of these things need to be communicated. There's a compartmentalization in the mental health community where there's a lack of communication, sharing of files, and things of that nature amongst professionals that could really help, provide tools to people, resources, tools. These are things, real emotional tools that could help the individual feel empowered to where they don't have to feel like, oh, I have to go to these extremes and these lengths to manipulate and have control. Because we're dealing with children that are being brought up, they're not being fathered, for one. They don't, I made a post today on my wall on social media about what father means, and the Latin root word of father, which it comes from, the Latin root word of father comes from patriotic, and that's the reason why our founding fathers of the United States were called founding fathers, because they were patriotic. And there's a legacy there that has to occur with the men, and there's something that is fundamentally missing in that way, where we're not fathering this generation, and even myself, I'm learning these things for myself. But the accountability component is missing.
Yeah.
I mean, as individuals, as adults, as we become adults. Yes. I mean, they say hurt people, and that's fine. I understand that. But as adults, it's up to us to be accountable for our own healing.
Mm-hmm.
And that accountability ultimately lies on us as individuals. No matter how we react or inflict pain on others, ultimately it rests on your shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think we have to start thinking of bullying in a different way. We assume bullying is like, teasing, picking on, that kind of thing. Well, I find positive toxicity to be a form of bullying. And I'll tell you what happened. I had a friend, and I opened up to her about a mutual friend that I was concerned about. And this friend started saying, "Oh, stop being so negative, but you got to build her up, our friend. You got to really, help her see the miracle." And I said, "Well, I don't see a miracle here. I see her doing something that looks very mentally dangerous for herself." "Oh, now you're bringing me down too. You're really so negative." And I felt bullied. It was, just the average Joe may not see it that way, but I was not validating or invalidating someone for exactly where they are in the moment with this whatever negative. I don't even like to call it negative, because to me everything is positive. Everything's bringing us to a healthier place, whether it looks horrible or not. And I felt so invalidated for and for the fact that I trusted her to open up to her. So we see this all the time with children. Children are made to feel, just really shut up, basically. We don't want to hear what you have to say. There's a rare parent who knows how to sit with their children. I'm not a parent, so I need to say that first. But I don't see parents often who can sit with their children. I'll give you an example that's really probably a tough one for people to get. I have a friend who said to her family, which is kind of falling apart, she said to her daughter, "Family is everything. You have to put family first." Well, I don't believe that, because when you're in a family that feels abusive to you, I say, no, your family doesn't come first. The people who don't abuse you come first. And I want to share with you an incredible quote that I heard the other day that really realigned my mind. The quote was, "Any conclusion is an illusion." So anytime we decide that something is a certain way and will always be that way, like, for instance, I can't talk to that friend anymore who was throwing positive toxicity at me, that's a conclusion I'm making about a future that hasn't happened. So it's illusory. So I just say to myself, right now, in this moment, I choose not to. But in the future, I may talk to her like that.
Yeah, and I think there's learned behaviors as well, Janet. And there's an epidemic in our counterculture, if you will, of projecting.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that too. Absolutely. Like whenever there's a judgment, that's going to ultimately lead to, to regression, to war. When there's curiosity, that's going to lead to progression. It's going to lead to peace. Your quote that you said, Janet, reminded me of a quote from Cloud Atlas. It's how did it go? Truth is. Oh man, I'm struggling now to find it. Truth is singular. Its versions are mistruths. So whenever you tell a story or whenever you make a judgment, it's an illusion. It's not truth. It's a version of a mistruth. But when you come from a place of exploring, of understanding, of asking questions, of deep listening, you start to get closer to the singularity of truth. But the moment you kind of make that judgment, it cuts off that entire world of possibility, that entire world of understanding.
Yeah, and
I just have to let you guys know that I have to leave in a minute or two.
Okay, that's fine.
So I'll just jump off. Is there anything else you wanted to say or ask me about?
No, I was, anything else you want to add to the conversation before you leave? And if you want to stay with me, Michael, I'm more than happy if you have time. If not, that's fine. You guys can come back on the air anytime. You're more than welcome.
Oh, I love talking to the two of you. It thinks you understand what I'm saying. I feel so heard. I have other friends who could hear this kind of stuff, but they're far and few between, And I'm more, as my life goes on, I'm just more and more comfortable with people that I can have this kind of authentic conversation with, without having positivity shoved at me. Or I'm not saying be negative. I'm actually not saying be positive. I'm saying just be.
Yeah.
Be with where you're at and make that the priority, and breathe into that beingness, that feeling you're having.
You have so much experience, Janet, and I thank you so much for coming on the show. And when you say you feel heard, I'm so grateful. That's amazing. That's the best compliment you could ever give me. As an empath or somebody that's very sensitive, I'm hyper aware of tapping into frequencies and different frequencies, and that is by far the biggest compliment ever.
Thank you.
Before you go, Janet, I just want to say one quick thing. Yeah, these are the conversations we want to have in what we're doing. It's working. It's changing the world from the inside out, and we have to start with what's real. And thank you so much for joining us in this conversation, Janet.
Oh, thanks for having me. Really honored. All right, you guys, be well.
Awesome. All right, to be continued.
Yep, that's right.
Be well. Okay, well, we can carry on the conversation if you like for a few more minutes, or
sure.
For a while. I have time here.
Yeah, no problem. Now, reflecting on all of this and tying it into our efforts with the Karmic Margin Call project, what comes up for me is how anything that becomes a judgment, kind of turns into a doctrine, and it kind of turns into kind of like a cult-like mentality. And that's what I think we're all dealing with, is this tribalistic sense where, we're defending something that we don't really know the reality of it. So as far as my intentions with the Karmic Margin Call project, my intention is to change the financial system. And I'm starting to learn how to ask other people, is this worth doing? Do you want to do this? What I've observed is when you go down a path of worshiping an economic ideal like socialism, like communism, like capitalism, it kind of becomes your deity. It kind of becomes, what you worship. And everything starts to get filtered, and through that perception, we create war. We create conflict out of that. I mean, how many wars have been fought in the last...
But not just that, years? As you mentioned, sociopathy as well. It cultivates a mentality and a business template. And the thing is that limits the innovation of individuality and new ideas and new concepts and things that could be nurtured in our society for the better, for the greater good.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the conversations we're starting here, and what I want to continue to encourage to your listeners and to the people who are starting to come forward and tell us their stories, is that we want to create that space where we just do things differently now, to shift from competitiveness to cooperation. One of the things that I'm interested in introducing, I'm part of an international inquiry cluster right now where we're talking about some deep problems and how to solve them. We're working with a model that I think was created or advocated by Peter Block, which are these 6 conversations. The first conversation is about appreciation, really listening to each other and talking about what you appreciate in each other. The second conversation is about possibility. Okay, well, what could we do? What are we entertaining doing? The third is invitation. Let's invite each other to start working on projects together, to start, maybe taking action